A top story, U.S. President Trump has sacked National Security Advisor John Bolton, saying that he disagreed with many of his policies. Now, Trump took to Twitter to make his announcement. His tweet read in a quote here: "I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House and disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, and as did others in the administration. And therefore, I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week." Unquote. Minutes later, Trump's tweet, John Bolton took to Twitter and said, and I quote here, "I offered to resign last night, and President Trump said, let's talk about it tomorrow." Unquote. The 70-year-old Bolton, who took up the post in April 2018, had also often been at odds with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who is a Trump loyalist. Addressing the Daily Brief along with Steve Mnuchin, U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo said that U.S. President is well within his right to choose his team.
The President asked for Ambassador Bolton's resignation. As I understand it, it was received this morning. The President's entitled to the staff that he wants at any moment. This is a staff person who works directly for the President of the United States, and he should have people that he trusts and values and whose efforts and judgments benefit him in delivering American foreign policy. It's what, as Cabinet Member Secretary Mnuchin and I try and do each and every day, and when the President makes a decision like this, he's well within his rights to do so.
The firing of Bolton amid reports of divisions in the Trump cabinet over a cancelled peace plan to invite the Taliban to the United States. Bolton had offered peace talks with the Taliban. The U.S. president scrapped last week after inviting the group to the U.S. peace talks. Now, Trump's policy drew criticism, especially because of its timing close to the anniversary of the September 11, 2001 attacks by al-Qaeda. Bolton had served as Trump's top national security aide since April 9, 2018. Bolton was Trump's third national security advisor after Michael Flynn and H.R. McMaster. Our WION correspondent Kate Fisher gets us more on this from Washington, D.C. Listen in.
This was an abrupt dismissal, and it's still unclear who instigated it. Moments after Mr. Trump's tweet, Mr. Bolton tweeted that he'd actually offered his resignation. But Mr. Trump had told him, let's talk about it tomorrow. What we do know is that this is yet another departure from Donald Trump's White House, signalling more lack of stability at the top of the American government. It's been clear for some time that the two men had very different outlooks on foreign policy. Mr. Bolton is a hawk, and his views differed from the president on issues from Iran to North Korea. He'd advocated for a much tougher stance on Russia, Afghanistan and North Korea and Iran. He disagreed with Mr. Trump's decision to go into the demilitarized zone to meet with Kim Jong-un. And earlier this year, Mr. Trump was reportedly angry with the failure of U.S. policy in Venezuela, complaining that Mr. Bolton had misled him about how easy it would be to replace President Nicolás Maduro, who's clung to power. Mr. Bolton was the chief architect of Mr. Trump's hardline stance against Iran, but he'd reportedly opposed the president's recent suggestions that he was willing to talk to the Iranian leadership. Following his ousting, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made it clear at a press conference that President Trump was indeed ready to speak to Iran's leader without any preconditions, something that Mr. Bolton was vehemently opposed to. Many reports have suggested that perhaps the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, was Mr. Bolton's opposition to peace talks with the Taliban, which Mr. Trump scrapped at the weekend after inviting the group to the US previously. Well, Mr. Bolton had a reputation as a warmonger, and Mr. Trump once reportedly joked in an Oval Office meeting that John has never seen a war he doesn't like. Well, that interventionist attitude goes completely against Donald Trump's America First policy and his desire to end America's wars and not to start more. President Trump says he'll announce a new national security advisor next week.